management, and that's about the PCOS, a meta-analysis of the role of PCOS, which he'll talk about, and how the various therapies pan out in terms of PCOS. So now we know that PCOS is a very, very heterogeneous condition. It's a syndrome, but it's associated with a problem of a non ovarian origin hyperandrogenism because of no secondary cause in that perspective. So there are so many treatment options available, including metformin, estrogen, progesterone, anti-androgens. People talk about myoinositol and so many other treatments. So now Dr. Sain will talk about this recent study which is published just in the JCM.
The discussion of today is the recently published in the Journal of Endocrine Society. So the topic of today is efficacy of treatments. Now the statement here only gives away that it is talking about efficacy of treatments, and there are no defined specific treatments as such for the study population in this case, that is the polycystic ovarian syndrome in adolescents. And it was a meta-analysis which was done. Now we go into the basic questions of why this paper was done. And the first thing is that PCOS is a very common endocrine abnormality, which we all get in a pediatric endocrine clinic. Now, what are the effects of this disease? As we all know, apart from its cosmetic effects and its effects on menstruation, there are other metabolic factors which it changes, and it increases the risk of dysglycemia, hyperlipidemia, obesity in the short term. It also has major effects in the long term, which are endometrial cancer, infertility, pregnancy loss, and premature delivery. Now, as the title mentions that it is looking forward to the efficacy of treatments, we understand there are no ideal treatments as such. Like in case of diabetes, we all know that there is only one treatment like insulin. This is not the case in this area of pediatric endocrinology. So this study aims to find out which treatment is the best out of all the randomized controlled trials which have been done. So this is the basis of the study, and I'll take it forward from here. So what is the study population in this case? It was adolescent girls with PCOS. The study design was a systematic review and meta-analysis of all the RCTs. And the setting is, as you all can understand, as it was a meta-analysis of various RCTs, it has to be a multicentric study. Now, how was the study done? First, as we all do when we search for papers, they also got a literature search in Medline, Embase, Cochrane Central Register of Controlled Trials. Now, what did they specifically look into? They looked into PCOS, adolescent girls with PCOS who were treated with metformin monotherapy, OCP monotherapy, or combination therapies with either lifestyle interventions, pioglitazone, spironolactone, or flutamide. So basically all the forms of combinations of therapy in PCOS which is generally available, and many like pioglitazone, spironolactone, or flutamide which are generally not used upfront in PCOS management. So basically all the drugs which we can use or have been used have been looked into in this study. Now, what did they do to improve their population base? After searching the index journals, they went in for hand searches. Now, what are hand searches? Like these are published, studies which aren't available in the index journals like Medline or Cochrane. So they have improved much upon the population, and also they have included conference proceedings from European and American societies. So they have compiled a huge amount of data. And how have they taken care of the bias that is inherent in such studies? They have gone in for no language restriction. Like many countries do publications in their own language. So the language bias has also been done away with in this study. Now, how did they remove the researcher bias? They have got in two independent reviewers to take up the research to take up the researches according to the quality of evidence available at that point of time. So they have done away with language bias and also with the researcher bias which can be there before starting of the study. So this is how they did it. So I'm not going into the basics of this. they found 928 records upfront, and then they systematically removed all that, and they focused only on 38 RCTs, which they found at last, which were fitting the criteria. So if I come to the trial and population characteristics, across all the included studies, they have said that the patient age was 12 to 35 years. Now, they have mentioned that they wanted to specifically look at the population range from 11 to 19 years. As the statement goes, some of the included RCTs had included adolescents and adults, and therefore we tried to contact the authors to provide data, but we received no response. Now, here lies a problem of bias which can arrive at this point of time, but they performed a meta regression to ascertain only the data which was relevant to the study.
How did they do that?
So meta regression,
So unless and until they know that which of these 2,400 patients were 19 to 35, it is impossible to do that. So in a way, this is a limitation of the study, that there are older people which are also part of it. So ideally, they should have excluded the whole trial, which included both adolescents and adults, and clearly the data was not done. But then the numbers would be really low, so maybe that's why they have done that. So this is a big limitation that you have to consider.
Continuing, they have seen that the mean BMI was 27.6. That is also okay, because this problem mainly occurs in obese children. And we also see that 19 studies only included overweight. So they have also excluded the population of underweight, not underweight, but normal BMI population having PCOS. And the diagnostic criteria for PCOS also varied according to the study. So this is also a limitation of this study. There was no standard criteria for PCOS diagnosis.
But that's variable from the time being. So every time you will have a different criteria. So you can't do, there's no other way. Because suppose you did a study in 1990 when you had a different criteria, you can't have a different criteria by using now. So it can't be retrospectively fitted there, which is fine. Lean PCOS exclusion is a problem. Because those lean PCOS may be similar in terms of the response to metformin or different. So I would say lean PCOS would have been a major thing, which is listed with two major limitations: one 19 to 35, and second is lean PCOS. But even then, 2,400 is a huge number.
Apart from this,
and they are all randomized. So you should remember these are randomized trials. So this is not just a data analysis.
Apart from the two biases that come out of this trial and population characteristics, there are several which they have mentioned on their own. Like the risk of bias, they have said specifically was considered high for most trials, because the majority did not report methods of concealment of allocation or blinding. And also several trials reported incomplete follow-up data. So for the population which they are studying and the effects they are seeing, incomplete follow-up data is considered to be a problem in this setting. So what are the outcomes which they saw in this study population? The major outcomes which they saw were two. The primary outcome was menstrual cycle regulation and hirsutism scores. So the menstrual cycle regulation definition as per provided is the number of cycles improvement per month. And the hirsutism score is via the standardized FGF scores, which they have noted. Apart from the primary outcome measures, there were several secondary outcome measures like acne, dysglycemia, BMI, total testosterone levels. But as clinicians, will we mainly be concerned about the BMI? So mainly we look at menstrual cycle regulation, hirsutism, and BMI.
What about testosterone?
So testosterone with therapy is not a good marker, because as the CBG increases, the testosterone may rise, and that is the finding of their study also. That testosterone,
testosterone is no use at all, because you're using estrogen in most cases anyway. Now, if you have to look at one thing in terms of somebody who comes to you with adolescent PCOS, which outcome will be most important for you?
So the outcome which the patient is coming to me with, I want to improve that. First, menstrual regularity, and second is hirsutism.
These two are very important. And of course, if you get information about what happens to her 2 years after stopping treatment, that will be a very, very important parameter, because we all know that PCOS is a two-hit model. There is an inherent tendency, and then you have a top tendency. Now, whether these therapies are reversing PCOS in a long term will be the major thing from that perspective, because my major question is somebody who is being started. Now, 12 years calling it PCOS is again a debate. It's the at-risk PCOS. It's like a mixed bag. But my main aim is somebody who comes to me between 11 to 18 is, yes, of course, I have to correct the symptoms. But what about the disease? Am I going to be able to, is there a therapy which will improve in terms of reversing, so to speak, PCOS?
So this they haven't committed to, because the surveys in most have focused, some have focused only on 3 months follow-up.
They don't
Some,
have long-term
yeah,
follow-up,
because
of
that's why
course.
they haven't committed to this data.
Yeah.
So how did they do it? As I already mentioned, they concentrated on 37 RCTs. They got a sample size of around 2,400, and then they went in for a network meta-analysis.
What is that?
So network meta-analysis is 2 by 2 comparing head-on. But when we have multiple surveys with multiple outcomes, which not outcomes, multiple combinations of therapies which they are giving, they use a network meta-analysis now.
So suppose you had 20 trials of metformin versus no metformin, you can do a simple trial. Here the problem is one is metformin, one is estrogen, one is this, one is combination. Then you can't use the typical meta-analysis. This is what they have done.
So what did they find? They have presented this as a chart, which is pretty good. And you can see at upfront only that they had no intervention which improves menstrual regularity. In cases of hirsutism, they found out there was an improvement in FGF score. Now I'll specifically talk about these 2 points, because these two are the main concern.
So when you say there is no improvement in menstrual irregularity, even if you give estrogen progesterone, the menstrual irregularity is not there.
That's what they are finding, sir.
It sounds a bit confusing.
So as the evidence shows, no statistical important change in menstrual regulation across all interventions. Now, what they found was that only once RCT with only 18 patients had moderate quality evidence, which showed increased menstrual cycle regulation by metformin lifestyle versus lifestyle alone.
So they would not be focusing in those who are on OCs. If somebody is on estrogen progesterone, by rule, you will have a normal periods. That will be the factor. They're looking at non-OC intervention of correcting the periods. That will be there?
No, sir. They have looked into every combination, sir. Everything.
So this is not mentioned. So anyway,
the second is that monotherapy or combination therapy was associated with statistically important reduction in hirsutism against any placebo. And also that combination therapy is more effective in reductions of hirsutism scores when compared with monotherapy.
So if you just put it this way, we're talking about lifestyle, metformin, and OC. These are the three. Now, if you don't go into their data, you go in your own theoretical understanding of all subjects, what will happen to the menstrual regularity, what will happen to the BMI, what will happen to hirsutism score.
So with OCPs alone?
With one by one. OCPs?
So as I give OCPs, it is generally seen menstrual cycle regularizes. The second, hirsutism will also improve.
BMI?
So BMI, I don't know. With sir, I am not sure.
Maybe low, or it won't decrease. It may increase also. Metformin?
So metformin, insulin sensitivity improve karega. So as sir, BMI will also reduce.
So
hyperandrogenism.
Other things is more difficult. So menstrual regularity will happen only once you reduce the BMI and you have normal ovulation. So metformin is mainly for BMI reduction. OCs is for the hyperandrogenism and that. And the third is lifestyle, of course, is behaving like metformin. Fourth, you add anti-androgen. So that, of course, is a different, just mainly only focusing about the androgenic effects. So what they are saying here is interesting, that metformin also causes similar reduction in FGS as OC.
So, and one more thing which I have mentioned here. So they are specifically mentioned that our network meta-analysis challenges the current practice and belief that OCPs improve menstrual cycle regulation and reduces hirsutism. But in the next line only, they have mentioned that as the included RCTs used small sample sizes and the designs were at high risk of bias, and large number of patients were lost to follow-up. So this can't be taken at face value. And in conclusion, they have said that metformin and OCPs singly or in combination with other interventions can reduce hirsutism scores, but none of these medications led to effective menstrual cycle regulation or weight reduction. Also going on to say that the use of OCPs led to worse cardiometabolic risk factors.
So now if you think about it, how will it change your practice?
So as they have already mentioned, we can't take it as a guideline.
I think what the last line is important. If you use OCT alone, you may have a worsening of cardiometabolic risk factor.
Huh.
So how do you mitigate that?
So we mitigate that by using lifestyle measures
Use
per se
metformin.
and metformin.
So basically, what they're trying to say is that you add metformin. So if you want to use both, because if metformin is effective, it was going to be additive. There will be more benefits. So definitely use both. Don't use in singular. The problem here is that these were all obese people. Or overweight.
43% were obese, but the mean BMI was also high.
No, you said that they did not take lean people.
So 43%, the study criteria was only obese, and the rest 57% took both.
No, lean were not there. No?
So
Either obese or overweight.
So 43% took only obese.
Okay.
Yeah, 43% of the RCTs.
So that will be a bias that metformin will be more effective in those individuals. So this will be another issue. So if you now simply look at it, your treatment will be very simple. If you have to start, you start with E plus P is the best treatment. If somebody has obesity, high SGPT, impaired glucose tolerance, then you add metformin at that point of time. And then 3 to 6 months, wait for some time, no response, then you start thinking of an anti-androgen in that situation. So I think this is pretty much clear. This is not helping you much because it's such a heterogeneous data. There's so many but groups which have done the study at different times and including older people as well. So it is not going to help it. And I don't find it really of any sense that if you're using estrogen progesterone, why is your menstrual irregularity still there? So that's a very, very important thing. Either in the baseline, the anovulation was not that more. So that is there, but otherwise it is basically counterintuitive that if you give E plus P, how can there be menstrual irregularity in that?